everyone! It's time for our day one panel, from idea to implementation in urban environments, on the nuts and bolts, opportunities and barriers involved in bringing solutions for sustainable and resilient cities to the real world. Dun, dun, dun. It's my honor to welcome our moderator, Adam Benzion, who will introduce his panel speakers. Besides being the illustrious Senior Vice President at Edge Impulse, Adam is also one of our Hackster.io co-founders. Do your thing, Adam.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good to see you, dear friend. And I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, back in the day, I did a few things with Hackster, so it makes me super proud to be back and be part of this community. So hi, everyone from all over the world, I hope. Welcome all the hackers, engineers, nerds, and geeks for Hackster Impact. And today we're going to talk about urban developments, urban environments. How do we actually take ideas and implement them in cities? Not a simple thing to do. And as Alex said, I'm Adam Benzion. I'll be a host tonight. I used to be the co-founder of Hackster, and I work as a senior vice president at Edge Impulse on partnerships. So first, let me introduce the panelists, and I'll let them also introduce themselves. So we'll learn a little bit more about them. We have Jason JonMichael. He's a senior strategist at the U.S. Department of Transportation. We have Constantin, who is the CEO of Zalmotek. And we have Guneet, Bedi, a senior vice president and general manager at Arduino. So before we get into the panel, why don't you each go, maybe start with Jason, then Constantin and Guneet. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your work.
Sure. Well, first of all, good evening to those that are attending in the evening, and good day to those that are maybe even in the middle of their day or even starting their day. My name is Jason JonMichael. As Adam mentioned, I'm a senior strategist at the U.S. Department of Transportation. I'm in a unique office that's within the office of the secretary. And that office is the HOS, as you see up there, the Highly Automated Systems Safety Center of Excellence. So we were an office that was congressionally mandated as part of the most recent bipartisan infrastructure law. And within that, it provided a bit of a charge for this office. And so our duty is to work both within the department and externally to help the U.S. Department of Transportation and all of its operating authorities prepare for the U.S. DOT to be able to review, assess, and validate the safety of artificial intelligence within the transportation system. Prior to that, I was an executive at the city of Austin, where I led the development of the city's first smart mobility office and program. And obviously, if you're familiar with Austin, Texas, and all of the different smart city things that are going on there, I had a little bit to do with some of that. And prior to that, I had about 25 years in the private sector, actually turning on systems. I was a systems integrator by trade. So thank you. Good to be here.
Constantin.
Hello. Hey. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm the co-founder of Zalmotek, research and development company. But as a background, I've started as a maker, and of course, I learned everything I knew with Arduino. I was just finishing university when Arduino Uno came on, so we started with that. We got really into Internet of Things products. We kept building them. We did STEM education for kids, robotics courses, locally, nationally. And after that, we try to go towards the professional area with companies, and founded Zalmotek as a research and development company. And in the last few years, we've been focusing on anything that's related to computing on the edge, AI, the platforms, the hardware platforms available, and the software as well has grown so much and offers so much possibility that we welcome any challenge, of course, any project that is open and we can post about it. We go to Hackster, and in there we made many friends, and we kept sharing and building upon the open source hardware community. And we're glad to be part of it and to continue building our projects.
Awesome.
Hey guys, good to see Adam, Jason, and Constantin again, Guneet, Bedi. So I'm the Senior Vice President, lead the Americas and Enterprise Operations for Arduino. And a lot of you hackers out there are like, what is Arduino doing in enterprise? So I started off Constantin, similar to you, Uno in college, but I was a computer science guy, so I still wanted to really get my hands dirty with electronics, and then spent a bunch of years in large enterprise companies, specifically Oracle and Cisco. And Cisco was in a very big, way looking at smart cities and helping cities. And Jason, I'm sure you know that, and you've been working. I live in Austin, Jason, as you know, but I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now, and it was freaking snowing today. I'm really here to talk a lot about the implementation challenges that we look at when we're doing innovation in urban planning and making it real. I think the community has a very, very big role to play. And, community engagement and involvement is so important in both the ideation, but also the execution phases. And that's why, as you guys know, Arduino, along with Hackster, has been one of the, primary ones to help you with ideation, but now also help with execution. And a lot of, hopefully I can share a lot of insights on past projects, highlighting lessons learned, best practices, and navigating some of the complex journey from concept to reality. And, we'll share some examples, some fun examples of where some stuff has become scalable and being deployed. So really looking forward to chit-chatting with all of you.
Awesome. Great, Guneet. And for those of you who haven't checked yet, what Arduino has done for the last few years on the pro side, you should. I could pitch this for quite a while because I'm familiar with the product line, but it's very impressive. Cool. So in today's panel, we're going to talk about, again, urban development and smart cities, and how these things have evolved so fast. All of us see this in our cities, no matter where we live. I live in Jakarta right now in Indonesia, and I see this stuff everywhere. IoT devices, 5G antennas, weird stuff running on the MRT system here, which is their subway. So smart cities are things that we all live in, and we see how they evolve. And I look at some data points before we start to kind of give you guys perspective. This year, cities around the world are going to spend $1 trillion on all sorts of digital and electronic and software developments that improve, the citizens' life. And its projection to double in the next 10 years, 2 trillion. I mean, it's kind of funny numbers. We don't even know what these numbers mean because they're so big. But it means it's one of the biggest, actually, markets and industries that we can address. And modernizing cities is a huge endeavor. We're talking about aspects of waste management, transportation, public safety, water, gas, power, and of course, internet and communications infrastructure. And all the driving factors are because city populations are growing everywhere around the world. People are moving to cities. They require more services. They want to consume more sophisticated services. And on top of that, you also see all this automation of AI and machine learning that gets into all these devices. So things are becoming a lot more complex, real fast, and it gets real busy. So let's start with the first question for Jason, and let's kind of think about the biggest trends. Jason sees things from the upper level, from the highest level, what comes to the cities, what comes to the state level, and what people are trying to implement. So Jason, what are the biggest trends you're seeing coming through from the Department of Transportation across the US and for your city, and also across the world, because Jason also works with sister cities around the world, so it's not just a US perspective. Some of the trends that you've seen, Jason.
Thank you, Adam. Well, first of all, I think some of it's not really new trends, but really a continuance of I wouldn't even call it a trend. It's just the path we're on related to how we're continuing to digitally transform things. In the beginning of smart cities, it was really around how we could digitize data, make it available to people, and make that connection right with the community, with the residents, even the visitors that come to visit. You mentioned transit. That's a great way of experiencing that. And as part of that digital transformation, several different things are happening in sequence now. Right, we're extending all the way to the edge. Right, we're getting closer and closer to the people that need accessibility to those solutions and systems. But to your point, where the pace is moving so much that we in government, we ask ourselves and maintain the question around safety and accessibility as two main pieces. Right, how safe are the things that are being implemented into the public spaces, and is everyone getting an opportunity, an equal opportunity, or an equitable opportunity, to be more exact, on how on how they can access these services, because these services will change their daily lives, right? It'll have a direct impact. We've heard that from this morning. And then I would say the advent that it's not just happening in big cities. Big cities is where the nucleus of the attention is, but it's happening across all cities and all forms related to what you'll hear a lot and what we already heard this morning with some of the SCADA system folks, the operational technologies, right? And this is where it meets closer to the street, where people are moving around. And then lastly, I would say that it's also happening out in the rural communities. So let's not forget that things like that are taking place. And what's really beautiful to see is this cross-pollination that's beginning to happen, where, you know, robotic farming things might be really well suited in a downtown urban environment. Say a bike lane, for instance. It's fall, leaves are falling. Bikes and bicyclists don't have very good traction on fallen leaves. And if they're stuck in the bike lanes, then that presents a unique problem right now, because those lanes are thinner or skinnier than a typical lane. And so therefore the vacuum trucks that you see don't fit there. So there's all of this. If you go and look outside any smart city, what you'll see is a lot of gaps. And those gaps are where most of the innovation needs to take place right now. And then lastly, I would say that we are all part of what is the great pivot. We talked a lot around IoT, autonomy, and AI, and things that were really driving the economies and the accomplishments that we've made today, up to today. But with you know, more of an inclusion now of environmentalism and sustainability, what we've seen with the different laws in the United States as well as across the world is a pivot to electrification. And now what we're seeing is, all right, how do these other formative technologies that were the thing that was talked about for the last decade, how are they going to actually operationalize themselves into transforming the way that we think about the services that we use, and more importantly, our impact on the environment?
Super interesting. And I love what you just said about the gaps, that the gaps are the opportunity that we should look for, the things that don't work. Awesome. Constantin, I want to get your opinion on this, in particularly from the project that you actually build for some of your clients and some of the trends that you see in that respect. What are the things that people are asking you to build or coming through to have a conversation about? So what are you building actually in the coming years?
Yeah, for sure. We have seen lots of movement in the smart city ecosystem, and of course, it's driven on one side by the hardware development. We have so much more powerful hardware that can run completely on the edge. Many things that they were working as a node. You get stuff into the cloud, take a decision, and after go back to the node, and they were very tedious because of the connectivity and so on. Now you can completely do them on the edge on super powerful hardware that is both optimally cost and very efficient from a technical point of view. So so many new challenges that were previously impossible are now relatively possible, and it's just a matter of finding a good mix. And on one side, it's this. The other is that once you have these nodes deployed, it's very easy to tackle new challenges. And I'll just show very fast two of the previous projects we had, just as general explanation and just to prove my point. We designed a controller for smart city lights, and while previously these things you can switch lights remotely and they were good enough, now I have enough power in that to run it as a mesh network and have many other sensors that can start the light when somebody is near them. So I am efficient with the current I'm using with those light poles. I can detect cars. I can detect the humidity, temperature, any other environmental aspects, and create a nice map in the cloud with all this data. And it's more of a, we started as a let's remote control and monitor things, and now it's a fully active real-time platform. So it's so powerful what you can tackle once you have these devices deployed in the field. And another very cool example, we have designed a hard hat that has a computer vision, and many tasks that on a construction site you are doing by holding a phone, inspection, safety, all these things. Now it's just a matter of looking in the right direction, and you can run models, you can deploy all of this data, and much of the work that the workers were doing at the desk after 8 hours in the construction site, and you are going to download your data to put everything in there and report how your day went. Now it's a matter of, it's a real time, you can take decisions, you can even address with computer vision models things that maybe the worker was not even actively looking at, like other people's hard hat detection, safety protocols, anything like that. So of course, with great power comes great responsibility, and safety and other measures have to be implemented. Us as hardware builders, we just build the technology, and but how it's exactly used, and it's more of a part of a afterwards certification, regulation, and so on. But for us, having this explosion of technology and capability, it's super impressive. And we've been receiving projects that are so different one from another, but actually when you're looking at the technical level, is just having the right sensors, the right development board, the right actuators, and just combining this data to solve the challenge. So it's I think when you're looking at the AI explosion that happens on the internet, you're not fully aware that this thing is also happening on the edge with hardware as well in the same time. And of course, hardware is harder to develop. Things are coming maybe at a slower pace than AI in the cloud, but the opportunities and the projects are definitely proving that the revolution of hardware is also coming strong.
Super interesting, super cool. And Guneet, what are your thoughts about this? You guys have been helping both enterprise developers and people who want to learn how to build enterprise-grade solutions for the past decades, and certainly for the past decade with your pro effort and your enterprise effort. Tell us about some of the technologies that you see getting deployed and getting used from your perspective in urban solution designs.
Absolutely, Adam. And I think Constantin, very, very interesting and good point on the technology, really catching up, especially at the edge. But that's one of the reasons, Adam, 3 years ago, we launched the Pro, because I think beyond technology, the next big thing, which is important for any of the innovation in smart cities and digital in general, is talent. And, what we realized is that there's so much ease of use that you can do and democratize how you do new solutions, all the way from ideation to, enterprise grade. Especially when you're familiar with the, something like Arduino or Raspberry Pi or whatever, the stuff that you would use on a day-to-day basis. And, now you start getting enterprise grade security. You get, minus 42 plus 85 Celsius. So, there's a very important tech, innovation going on to make sure that, all of these things can be available. But what we are seeing is, Jason, you brought up a very interesting point on the challenges and, the speed at which some of the things work. And, we are seeing the community, and especially, a lot of even the Hackster folks, create solutions which can open the eyes of policymakers to say, all right, this is possible, and this is possible at scale. We see tons of smart infrastructure monitoring, especially electric, monitoring, mission critical. We know a lot about the grids and all the other challenges we have, which are going on in the world. But a lot of the, monitoring can happen at pretty large scale in a very, very cost effective and quick manner. We're seeing a lot of environmental monitoring and control going on, everything from, lights to indoor and outdoor. And, Adam, a quick plug for Edge Impulse. We see that the fact that you can do an AI algorithm all the way at a postage size, sensor now, super powerful Cortex M4, what we call the NICLA lines, you should check it out. It's super compelling. You can actually find out a gas leakage, or you can find out some very, very harsh environment in a very easy prototyping fashion in weeks to create a solution. We see lots of smart parking systems coming out. Of course, Constantine, like you said, worker safety. The other thing which is very interesting, and I know, Jason, you talked about it, we talked about a lot of the urban side, but specifically smaller cities and rural side, tons of application of smart agriculture. And, especially with the sidewalk side, Amazon catching up, but with the networks like the LoRa available, we see tons of precision irrigation. Super impressed by how advanced some of the agriculture stuff is, and also the water quality monitoring and waste monitoring. So I think from our perspective, Adam, to sum it up, what we see is that the tech, but also more importantly, the talent which is available now can really open the eyes of the policymakers on what's possible, and possible in scale, not just as a breadboard hanging out with wires. These are IP67 enclosures. These are really, really enterprise grade stuff, and it can be done in the cost-effective manner, which was done only for prototyping before. So, if that helps, I'm happy to chat more about it. But that's the kind of stuff we're seeing now, which is fun.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, and I think about some of the examples that Constantin showed, what you talked about, environmental challenges like weather, heat, freezing, everything. All these devices have to be really hardened. They have to have very specific enclosures. They have to take a lot of beating and really withstand a lot. Actually, sometimes even if they're battery powered for quite a long time as well. So it all depends on the deployment. But they're not as gentle as other products might be, as they're pretty iPhones. They're things that really have to be rugged, and that's another big consideration when you build this stuff. Requires a lot of the mechanical industrial design as well before because we typically always think about the electronics and the software, but there's a lot more to that with this kind of devices. So I do have another question. Also, we'll start with Jason, and my question is, so it's a big market, a lot of solutions, a lot of interesting stuff, but how do you actually bring things to life? What actually goes to market? Because I would assume, again, as somebody who does not work on the policy level and the city level, that you can't just show up to a city or farm or a small town and say, I'm going to deploy a bunch of stuff. Maybe you can, I don't know, but there's got to be some sort of a testing, approval, what the equivalent of an FDA approval in the US for, say, medical devices. So how should solution providers consider collaborating with urban planners and policymakers before they actually build solutions to solve, a problem for a city?
Great question, and you nailed it, right? I mean, go out and connect to the government people. I mean, that's the reason I'm here, right? Is to ensure that there's this part of the conversation. So when I worked at the city of Austin, and let me first say I'm not a policy expert, right? I'm a technologist, an upstarter kind of guy, and then on top of that, a bit of a researcher from being able to provide the technical content that will assist policymakers with making the decisions they need to make, and hopefully give it to them in a timely manner, so they can make the decisions in the throes of disruption. Typically, right? You kind of open that up around. There's two ways of getting your product to market. There's one that is a disruptive way, and there's another one where you're a little bit more intentional with government and government regulators. At the very least, you're studying the existing laws in your country or your state or your city that may surround a particular industry. These industries are old. Electrification, right? Starting in the 20s, really didn't electrify all of the United States until well into the late 50s and 60s, and that was done through rural electric cooperatives in the United States, which provided a very different legal framework to work under. And so I like to remind folks that there are many different players involved when you look at a community, and then as you go from central urban to ex-urban, that changes. And so being cognizant of that, being there at those metropolitan planning organization meetings, so that you're getting understanding of what the planners are thinking for the next 20, 25 years, whether it be transportation planning or they're looking at population growth and needing to understand how medical services are going to be operated or even accessible to folks as the sprawl continues to happen. So, and then another part that I think is really important is that you're prepared for the resiliency question. We talked about hardening of devices. We talked about where that is and where the industry's headed, as far as being able to get something that can be in a very ugly environment, like a gas pipeline, for instance. But remember that when things go wrong, when disasters happen, it's government that responds first, right? And so finding ways to ensure that government has the capability to respond is important. And Guneet pointed out something very critical too, the talent piece. I wrote that down because while I worked at the city of Austin, or now at the USDOT, and we have access to some really, really bright people, not every community, especially the smaller cities and rural environments, have access to folks like data scientists, for instance, to be even able to analyze the data and provide some information, some wisdom, right, to those policymakers so they can enact new things. And so the last part I'd say is, if you're looking at what you're trying to invent, you found a gap, right? You've asked yourself why is this not working the way that I would want it to work? And I'm trying to experience it, right? That's where a lot of us come from, is those lived experiences. Then begin to dig into the why, dig into the history of why it ended up the way that it did. And that'll help you understand how you can be either intentional or disruptive. And I wouldn't say that there's no, obviously in government, we prefer not to be disrupted. Say that out loud. But I also appreciate sometimes when the market is at a hinge point, right? A bubble point where that level of disruption is almost required in order to help present something that then we in government can react to.
Excellent. Another quick follow-up question for you, Jason, just fast. How soon, if people are thinking about something, how soon should they engage with somebody like yourself in the life cycle of a product?
In the ideation phase. So when I ran the City of Austin's Smart Mobility program, we had an open call for innovation, right? Instead of picking one corridor in the city to be the innovation zone, we picked the entire city instead. Because we didn't want to necessarily say that some communities should get this technology or other communities should be the ones studied, but we wanted it to be across the board, something where the partners that were coming into the Smart Mobility Office had a path to see everything, right? To widen their vision. So yeah, the piece about that is that with a rapid implementation or a rapid prototyping type of scenario, we were faced with some really interesting solutions that were completely off base, right? I mean, technically sound, really could see that it would optimize something, but it was completely off base from the perspective of being something that a city could implement, right? And again, data scientists and how much care and feeding something needs is really important. Guneet mentioned smart parking. I mean, think about where that particular niche of the industry, where it was 10 years ago and where it is today. Very different.
Very different. Absolutely. We all see it and feel it. So the follow-up question is for Guneet. So what are some of the cool things that you've seen coming out of Arduino as far as finished product deployment? And I know personally, you guys do so much also around agriculture, and there's so many fields that you guys touch now. Again, and particularly more and more with a pro line of products, there's several of them right now, and the cloud. Maybe you can tell us about that. What have you guys been working on with your customers?
Absolutely, I'd love to. And taking this one step forward with what Jason said, I was recently with the co-founders of something called US Digital Response. You all should look it out. Great organization. A lot of the Hackster folks can help as mentors. And they got together about 100 mayors, Jason, as you know. I think it was in Chicago. And I think step one is I was very impressed by how advanced some of these policymakers are in understanding of technology. And, we are seeing tons and tons of projects, to answer your question, Adam, in the ideation phase. Right? And ideation phase, pretty much everything I talked about, from smart infrastructure monitoring. We see super cool acoustic monitoring with elevators to, environmental monitoring, like we said, for, various indoor and outdoor situations. But, there's kind of countless situations we see where the ideation can, get into it. So number one. Number two, I think we're seeing a lot of universities step up, right? So, Georgia Tech's Hive Institute, MIT, UT Austin. In fact, UT has the first time, it's funny, a computer science program which has a PLC programming lab. So it's, getting down to the electronics. So we see, I think, a lot of incubation happening in successful universities. Everything from new ways to do submarines, to do robotics, to do cobotics, which can be used in the government and smart city use cases. So I think that's one area. So I think, just to answer your question, that's a broad spectrum of the pyramid we see. We see tons of projects there, where I think a lot of people get involved. The ones which have made it all the way to scale, you're right, we're seeing a lot of agriculture projects as step one. So everything from precision irrigation to precision agriculture. We have solved a very interesting problem of how do you communicate in 8 feet tall cornfields with LoRa on top of a pivot. So, the technology is there, but we're seeing a lot of mass scale deployment in agriculture, also because the exact example of talent shortage. And, Arduino just happens to be one of the easiest to use versus a very in-depth stack. So I think we're seeing a lot of growth there. We are seeing smart parking rollouts. I think a lot of you have seen that in the European cities, but now they're starting to come in the US cities. We do, and just I'd love to get your perspective in the future, but I think we see a lot more experimentation happening in Asia and Europe, and then kind of starting to come in the US. Bosch implemented a very large parking solution with us in Singapore, and then in Barcelona and Seoul, and now we're starting to see that in the US, which is very interesting. We see that, and then we see a lot of ancillary transportation use cases. So snow plows, garbage trucks, a lot of these stuffs which were not known where they are, like for us in the industrial world. We see a lot of the implementations happening out there. And I think the common trend everywhere has been, Jason, you said, how do you create innovation hubs without having too many local resources? So, what we call the citizen technologist or citizen data scientist. It's really interesting where, some of our partners have one central team of, data scientists, sometimes in Eastern Europe, sometimes in Latin America, and that allows us to do multiple cities at a time. So, we're seeing, so I think that's the other top of the pyramid we're seeing, where a lot of data science teams are getting consolidated. And the last thing I'll say is, we are starting to see some active participation from, the industry. So I was in Phoenix, and Boeing has a very big facility in Phoenix, and Boeing is actively, aggressively working with us to launch some urban planning solutions, specifically with people counting and other stuff, So that's the kind of projects we're seeing. So we're seeing everything in the bottom of the pyramid to, thousands of devices being rolled out, Adam.
So again, another quick follow-up for you, Guneet, because you guys are in such a unique position. You see the entire life cycle from people who are tinkering and studying and prototyping to building, deploying at scale. Do you? And I think I saw on your website a while back. I don't remember if it's still there. You guys have some really smart methodologies from idea to product, right? In pretty fast pace. Any conversation you want to have about that when we talk to Jason about how step up early, talk about it in the ideation phase of what you're trying to build. What are your thoughts and the resources people can find?
I'll be very quick, and then I can do a multi-detailed follow-up. Our tagline, which is we love, is saying 9 months to 9 days. And we signed a partnership with Avnet right now. But I think what we're doing is, if you look at the old chip down design way and old way of doing products, it takes 9 months to build first article, build to ideation, all the way to software, firmware, and Constantin. I'm sure you do a lot of that, all the way to first release or deployment. It can take, on average, it used to take 9 months in the IoT world.
True.
Now with all the tech development and the boilerplating, and the funniest was, you guys might, some of you might know the name, which is Walker Reynolds. Walker Reynolds did a course of programming an entire Arduino PLC with ChatGPT. So, we're seeing 9 days, right? So our goal is to 9 days to have the first ideation with a real prototype showing what could be possible, the art of the possible. And then, of course, it takes a few months. We call it innovation in a box. we try and do within a quarter an industrial grade or, first industrial grade release with enclosures and 3D printing and laser cutting and all that good stuff. We love, Jason, you should look at it. We love the community in M-Hub in Chicago, where, M-Hub is where you get everybody together and, you get mechanical, electrical, computer science, data scientists all together working on it. So, but our goal is to, 9 months to 9 days to show it works. And then within a quarter of having the first release of, good enough product prototype. So happy to talk more, but Adam, that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Yeah, so I have a question for Constantin on this topic, but maybe as I ask Constantin and he replies, if you can find it and put it in the chat, I think people could use it. I know I saw a PDF had downloaded at some point on your website. Maybe it's gone, I don't know. But yeah, it was very useful. So Constantin, people come to you to build product, to from ideation phase to actually building, shipping, manufacturing. Considering that you have to certify the products with people like Jason and make sure that they would last the sun, the snow, the beatings, and the wind. What is your methodology? How do you actually help customers bring things to market, and your advice for people who want to work with companies like yourself, which extremely helpful. And that's how you get, by the way, faster from 9 months to 9 days. When you want, well, maybe 9 weeks. But I get it. Because you want to have a partner, right? That have done this many times, have understand supply chains, lead times, manufacturing sites, etc., pricing, BOMs. Tell us about your perspective. How do you actually help customers do that?
That's such a great question, and I'll start doubling down what Jason said. While in my earlier maker days, I would just build it just to make it happen, and afterwards think about certification and other important facts. Nowadays, when we're building products at Zalmotek, we start with that first, because ideation stage, just assessing what you need rather than building the thing in the lab and afterwards seeing that in real-time condition out there, it no longer works, or you have to apply for maybe a expensive certification. It's very important to think about that from the start. And our experience, just as a generic as possible, is the following: a few steps that you can take directly from the ideation phase that will ensure you have the right certification for the domain you're going for, and the shorter the road, as Guneet said, so you can actually build and deploy faster. So in our perspective, unless you need to innovate something that is really new to that domain, first take a look around at the modules existing on the market and see what modules are already certified for that. So having a great start, like for example, we were so happy by having the Arduino Pro series that if you want to use in an industrial space, it's already approved for all the temperature and robustness and everything. It's a good head start that you can make from step one. When you think about ideation, you're choosing your right modules that are already certified. And for example, communication, if you get the communication module that's already FCC approved, you're no longer going to that hard road unless it's specifically asked by the client. So as many modules that are already certified, on one side, you're getting towards the end of the process cheaper, but on the second side, it's already proven to work in that domain, in that ecosystem. So it's already less work for you as a developer. So you're choosing the right path. Secondly, if you have to actually get a certification or follow some regulation, it's very important to be upfront, to discuss that with the client from the startup, realize what these parts are. And I see that more and more people are trying to push that towards the end of the project. First, let's build it, make it work, and after that, we'll follow those steps. And those things really add up, so they have to be taken in consideration, so you're not delaying the launch of a product, delaying the whole experience, and at the end of the day, just being upset about the whole process. So as fast as you get these good modules to start with, you are aware of what certification, regulation you need to follow, then actually it's a good point of solving the challenge you have in front of you. And afterwards, if you are after you completed the prototyping phase and you end up with a recipe for manufacturing, it's a hassle-free road from there to going to market and completing the process. And one last thing, there's both at NASA and here in EU technology readiness levels. Besides doing working prototype, just understanding, okay, after that I need to take it to manufacturing state. I need to deploy it in a real-time condition. I need to create this recipe that afterwards, after the client finishes our contract, they can revisit, reiterate on that and come back to us maybe to do a new phase. All these steps are very important, and technology readiness levels are super important to follow through, because the job is not done when you have a working prototype. You have to bring it to market and test it in the real-time conditions. So super important, get that from the ideation phase, as said before, and things will go a bit smoother than neglecting this and pushing towards the end of the project.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for that. I would say to those who are listening, you know, this whole idea about certification and really using a professional organization to build your hardware product is so important. You underestimate when you kind of get excited about an idea that you're going to build. What does it actually take to build it? And the certification process could be very expensive, very lengthy. And if you want to ship your product to multiple countries, well, guess what? The EU has their own rules. India has its own rules. America has its own rules. But recycling and all sorts of things and the use of materials and lead, very, very interesting. The earlier you get into that, the better. And this is why I've done this once. I founded an electronics startup, and wow, it's a hard lesson to learn that you want to start early, because these things take time, they're expensive, and you want to master this really fast.
And Adam, this is a critical point. I just want to say one small thing. I think this is super important. Also, I think to look at certified components, right, versus trying to pick off the shelf, because, you know, you wouldn't think of Arduino doing certification, but our Portenta X8 is one of the first few PSA certified, boards. And, we have to kind of do the hard work now, because we're seeing that enterprise grade, use. So exactly what Constantin said, I think it's very important. But also look at not just the cost, but also look at, which of the components are certified, so the organization you get can accelerate and, use all the underlying certifications in there. So just wanted to add that small tidbit.
Yeah, and there's so much goes into that too. Also, you pick a product, and you pick it from the most reputable company you want, right? And it's not just, so that it has to be certified. It has to be available at scale, at quantities. And then it has to have all the right documentations, and all. I mean, if you ever work with hardware developers and double E's that need to build stuff, and they typically pick the right stuff, but if they don't, then they get stuck with documentation that leads them to go nowhere. Drivers that don't work, all sorts of things that just don't really work well, and they have to kind of upgrade the firmware sometimes to make it work. All these things slow you down as you build finished products, and you want to have the least friction with the most complete company that serves your goal. So
to echo on something, I got to interrupt too, Adam.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Guneet, for opening that up. So just to pull off on the string that Guneet has exposed, testing and validation, that's the era that we're in with a lot of this, right? We've all come down the trough, and the only way you dig your way out into something that's going to market is you need to be able to test it and verify it, right? And validate it in some kind of way. And there's lots of ways to do that. Like earlier, we were talking around the community and how we are getting things all the way to the edge and being able to federate things like data science, or even utilize people's lived experiences and new systems as a methodology, to verify and validate something on the ground is actually working in a digital twin the right way, or whatever like that. So we're in this era, right? But there's also the opportunity to build, create, invent a brand new thing, widget that is not already certified. And so, there's those certification bodies are critical to make sure that if you're a new company and you're bringing something in that's really new, that you affect those standards from their beginnings, right? That you are part of the Wi-Fi Alliance, or you're part of IEEE or something like that, where that community of practice is conversing around that thing. And then, I think, Guneet, you also said it, that the private campuses. So there's a lot of things that you can do in government, and there's a lot of things that you can't do in government. And where these private campuses, where you might have a Boeing or an auto manufacturing plant or something like that, where the partner that you're working with is interested in testing and validating something, make sure that you're inviting government to those demonstrations, so that they're getting an understanding of what is possible as well. And then as it relates to how to then take that to market in some ways, then you've got a better idea of the people that are interested in it. Government's not there to really create new, right? We're here to help ideate it, help get enough of it to a point to create a technical transfer, right, over to the private sector to run. I mean, we all take something for granted today: global positioning systems. That was all government tech. And imagine the world today if we didn't have the ability to highly accurately locate something. We wouldn't be able to do any of the things we're doing today.
Yeah, makes total sense. So I had a couple more questions, but also I see that we only have 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that if anybody has questions, you can post them right now. I'm trying to see where would I see the questions if they're posted. I guess on the main chat, maybe. I'm not quite sure. So maybe somebody from Hackster can help me if you see any questions that are being posted. But I also just, as closing, I want to just quickly ask, Hackster is a large developer community. People on Hackster, they're innovators, they're hackers, they're professional engineers, and even entrepreneurs. What are the most meaningful things that they should be exploring today to shape their future, the future developments that they're working on? The coolest technologies that you think they should be exploring and tinkering with that could actually lead to something interesting and impact the cities they live in, or any environment they live in. Maybe Constantin, we'll start with you this time.
Oh, for sure. I've been on this road and enjoying the process all the way through. So I think, as I said previously, for me, the latest revelation 2-3 years ago were technology readiness levels, which they go so well with any kind of project, and they keep you on track. Is like a great checklist to go through every time. So no matter the project, you can assess what current stage you are and see exactly how many steps and what they are, so you can go with that project to market. So this is very important, both for you as a product developer, but also to the client to take into consideration, because maybe you're just thinking about the prototyping phase, you are putting a price out there, and both of you are not aware of what's next. So it's very important to have the full picture. And of course, since we're on the topic of certifications, just being aware of certifications. And I'll add as well security. It's another thing that is quite neglected when you're trying to build things and making them work. And that's a kind of a less thing to check off the list, but it's better first than later. So being sure that the hardware you're choosing has good security and good certification from the start, and you are building on top of that and checking your list with the technology readiness level. It's the best advice I can give to pro makers out there.
Excellent. Any tips, Guneet, especially from you, leading one of the biggest developer communities in the world? What should people be tinkering with, playing with? What's exciting? Nikla, more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting. So I completely agree with Constantin. I think look at those things which take you to scale. Also start looking at new ways of solving the problem. Vision and video is very interesting, and with the edge capabilities and artificial intelligence and machine learning, you don't really need to go to the cloud as much. So we're in Grand Rapids in a manufacturing plant, largest factory manufacturer. And they were trying so hard to figure out if the machine is working or not. But you can do that a lot with acoustics and vision now, which was not available before, as well as the capability of doing this without wired, so a lot of BLE and Wi-Fi is really catching up. So I'd say, you don't have to do everything with vibration or, that kind of stuff. So just look at new ways which are coming out, and, keep yourself informed with a lot of the new ways of, out sensing non-intrusively, I'd say one. The only other thing I'd say is we see a lot of people who finish the electronics and then really struggle with, like you said, the mechanical and the certification parts of it. We have a company which had a special gray, special tone of white, and it was so expensive that it made the product not viable in cities. So thinking a little bit beyond electronics and how the whole ecosystem and, the hardware and the software comes together. The last thing I'll just say is, you don't always have to use the cloud. We love our cloud friends, but there is a way to do this very economically without paying tons and tons of dollars to AT&T and T-Mobile. So that's the vision, acoustics, BLE, Wi-Fi, and then look at new ways of doing things and not necessarily always have to use the cloud. So I leave you with that.
Do things on the edge. Makes sense. Last word? No, Katie.
No,
one
no
more
last. I don't get any parting shots.
Okay, one
quantum.
more. You got one more. Yep, go for it.
It's quantum.
Go for it.
That's all I got to say. Make sure that you're thinking about quantum and what your solution is going to look like in a quantum environment. And then echo Constantin's cyber first. That's it.
Super interesting. Absolutely. Security, safety. Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this. I hope the audience enjoyed this too. Thank you, Guneet. Thank you, Constantin. Jason, it's been a pleasure. Katie, good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Just a huge thank you to Adam, Jason, Guneet, Constantin for taking your time out of your day, which I know are all very, very busy. So we definitely appreciate that to join this Impact Summit and share your perspectives on the landscape of urban development and smart cities. We're just so glad that you could join us.